I've got the skin on the left side of the rudder, got it all glued down, and I run the iron over it and got it all smoothed out, the glue down on both the front spar there, the main tube, and all the way around the trailing edge. Before I put the skin on the right side, I have to make a hole in that fabric and push that wire out through it that goes for the beacon and the aft position light. On these drawings that I downloaded that I found, they show the Piper drawing, they show using a washer down here around that and then a piece of fabric over the top of that. Well, I'm not going to put a steel washer in there, even a stainless steel one. Now, I thought about making a grommet for that, or a washer for that, out of plastic, and I was going to use this plastic off of this oil jug, and it's nice and flat. It's pretty thick, heavy-duty plastic. That would work well for strain relief, stress release on that. But then I got to thinking that, well, that oil sometimes it's sticking pretty good, and I could probably get it cleaned, but I might have a better option than that. So I got to looking around in the house, and I found some lids. These are just like, this one's for Reese's potato salad, and this one is for some cheese, or same thing. They're HDPE, the lids. The containers now are a little bit brittle. I don't know what they are. They're different kind of plastic, but they're a little bit brittle, but these lids should work fine for what I need. Well, I'm going to cut a washer out of this, and I'm going to glue it on the inside. And they only require a grommet glued on the outside, or a doubler glued on the outside, but I'm going to put one on the inside too, and then one on the outside also. Since I'm going on the left side of that, I probably should use red, I suppose. This is the largest one. That's a 1 inch. That should be sufficient. Now, I'm going to put this right on the post under the leg of that bench, so it's got the most support. Oh, nice. Okay, there we go. Now it's got a paper label on it, which really won't hurt anything. But I suppose a little bit of lacquer thinner or something will take that off of there. Well, might as well do a couple more of these in case I need them someplace else. This is just a hole punch kit. I probably got this from Napa or other auto parts store. I don't know what the brand name is on it. All it says on there is wear safety goggles, made in USA. Now I'm going to use my Chinese Whitney hole punch here and punch a hole in the center of those for that wire to go through and figure out what size I need. I want it fairly tight. 225 thousandths, so about a 15/64, 7/32, quarter inch will work. What's going on? What's going on? Huh?
You're building a thing.
Building a thing? Yeah, maybe.
Testing out a new thing.
No, I'm making grommets to go in. This will go on the fabric, and then the wire that comes out of the tail for the beacon and stuff will go in that.
Oh,
go through that to help stress release.
Yeah.
I've got those other grommets. I don't know if you've seen those that I put on the tail for the seaplane grommets. Anytime you have a hole or penetration or something like that, or something coming through, you put something like this on there to help support the fabric to keep it from tearing out. So I've got that wire on the tail there for that comes out for the on the rudder for the beacon. Well, I've got good news and I got bad news with respect to my HDPE grommets here. The good news is that I soaked these in MEK for quite a while, and that has no effect on them at all, so they should work just fine for grommets on this airframe. The bad news is that whatever glue they use to glue those labels on is also unaffected by the MEK, and I couldn't get the glue to come off of there. So I've got them soaking in some paint thinner right now. We'll see if that loosens them up. I was looking for some alcohol. I thought I had a can of it here someplace, but I can't find it right now. So I soaked these. Well, I tried a bunch of stuff. I tried lacquer thinner, MEK, and that wouldn't touch these labels that were on here. When I soaked them in some paint thinner and some alcohol, I put a couple in some alcohol, and that worked to soften up the paper enough that I was able to get it off, but it didn't touch the adhesive on there at all. And I've tried everything so far that I could find on the adhesive. I tried MEK and lacquer thinner again on the adhesive, acetone. I tried acrylic clean. I found some of this Goo Gone stuff on the shelf, and I went down to the hangar and dug out what I could there, or the shop, and dug out what I could there. I tried some naphtha. That looked like it might soften it up. Xylol doesn't have any effect on it. I even tried some PPG DTR 601 enamel reducer, and none of it has any effect on that glue. So whatever that stuff is, it's pretty tenacious. I soaked those in lacquer thinner for a little while, and then I just took them out and took my pocket knife and scraped off all the glue off of them. Seemed like the last one was finally starting to soften up a little bit after about 20 minutes or so in the lacquer thinner. Go ahead and glue those onto the rudder, a couple of them, one on the inside and one on the outside. Now I'm going to glue this little grommet that I made to the inside of the fabric. And there's no, that shows it on the drawing there as being somewhere down here close to the horn. Doesn't really specify how far. It had a thing in there, but I'm going to put it a little closer up here to this rib, and put it right there. So I put that fairly close to the post so it's not sticking out too far, and put it up fairly close to this rib. I wanted it a little higher up from this horn. Actually, I was thinking about even putting it way up here so that it's out of the spray and the moisture and stuff. When the airplane's on the ramp, this tail section hangs down pretty close to the water, but when you're on takeoff, transitioning onto the step, there's a lot of spray and stuff comes up here and gets in this, on this lower portion of this rudder. In fact, the whole tail's pretty much covered to start with there for a little while. I wanted to keep that up a little higher. I got that hole just a little bit larger than this wire. And of course on the outside we'll put a grommet over it and have it pretty tight around the wire, and I can seal it up with some polybrush or some dope of some kind and get it sealed up pretty tight around there, so hopefully it doesn't leak. Take my soldering iron, I think it's warmed up enough now, and just melt the hole there through the fabric. There, and that's it. Now I'm done with it. I put it over here out of the way where it won't burn anything else. That makes some charred fabric around that opening, so I'm going to turn that over and clean that up around that hole with a razor. This probably doesn't matter so much because it's going to be closed over. I do this with ones with the seaplane grommets on it to keep it from collecting any water or stopping any water from going through. It keeps a nice cleaner hole there so that the crap doesn't build up around those little nubbles when they stick up. Get that wire through there. Put a little bit of poly tack around that hole there to help seal that up maybe. Now working on this rudder, I just about got it. I'm doing it pretty much the same way as I did the elevators. I didn't put as many stitches in here as I did on the elevators. Because of the wires that run through here, I had to space my stitches, so I just matched it all the way up. Basically what I did is I went down 2.5 inches from the face of this front tube and went back 2.5 inches, and that put me right through a loop where this cable comes up through here and then back along to where it ties into the ground here. And then I run it 4 inches spaces from there. I've got my finishing tapes on the ribs. I run a 3-inch tape here on the side of this, on the left side of this rudder where the seam is. And I got a 2-inch tape on the other side. Now I thought I was doing really good. I was getting pretty good at this, putting this fabric on. I did the first side and it come out pretty nice, and the second side even came out even better on this front spar as far as gluing the fabric down to the spar. The same with the back. It all come out pretty good. Very little cleanup on that. But on the back there, when I put the fabric on the right side, I went to heat form it around those curves, and I didn't get it heat formed right or something, because when I went around and I laid out my mark here an inch from the edge of the rear edge of the spar, and when I laid my fabric over it and marked it, the lines didn't come out right. It looked like it came out right. It was all looked like it was laying right, but when I cut it and when I fitted it up there, it didn't come anywhere close. It looks like it was cut with a lawnmower. I got most of the rough places where it was really bad. I used the iron in there and shrunk places that stuck out too far and stuff, and got it to come back and cleaned up pretty good, but I was kind of disappointed with that. I did get it glued in there real nice, and it did glue up real smooth. I just didn't get it cut right. I didn't get it heat formed right around there. Continuing on with this has got a little bit more work to do on it than what the elevators did. I of course got grommets in here with a doily over it where this wire comes through. That's put in there, and I put the little plastic washer, one on the inside, and glued it on, one on the outside, and then the doily over the top of that, and then this finishing tape over that. And then I had to make a gusset, a double gusset, two gussets over this horn. So those were cut out, figured out how to mount those, and it's fairly similar to what the one shown on the instruction sheet is. It's pretty close to that. We've got another gusset, another doubler here over the beacon light mount. I've got this one on the left side. I started to cut that out of some of my spare fabric, and then I realized what I had was kind of pre-shrunk. It was stuff that came off of where I shrunk going around the corners here, so it was a little bit stiff. So I dug out a piece of fabric that hadn't been pre-shrunk any at all, and that forms better over these odd shapes. Then I went ahead and sized it with some poly brush so that I could cut it out with pinking shears and get nice sharp crisp edges with the pinking shears on there. I've still got to do the right side, and I've got the fabric sized for that, but the glue's not quite, poly brush is not quite dry on that yet, so I'm going to wait to cut that out, and then I'll get that on. Once I get that on, then I can go ahead and put my finishing tape around this trailing edge. I'm going to put a doubler over this where this aft position light goes out here too. So I got another piece of fabric there that I'm sizing for that, and I'll get that done. Once it's dried out, I'll cut out a piece to fit over that. Now here's my pattern laid out here. This was the first one I cut out, and then like I said, once I got it cut out, I didn't like the way it felt. So I laid it out on some of this clean fabric, and we'll get it cut out when the stuff dries. Well, anyway, this is the right side, and it looks really good. I still have to put drain grommets, seaplane grommets in, and I think maybe I'll put one on each side down here on the bottom at that tail post. And I might put another one in right here on the on the left side, right where this rib comes in, because this comes down here. The original rudder on there rusted out from this light fixture down through that section there, so having one down there at the bottom will help keep the moisture out of it, but there might be moisture collect on this rib too. So I'm just gonna put one grommet on this on the left side on this one, and one on both sides on the bottom down there.